Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of the Overtime Show. Today's episode is going to be a part 2 to the episodes that Mitchell and Jeremy recorded yesterday. They covered the AFC wildcard games, so be sure to check those out. But today we have a very special guest, the touchdown writer and podcaster, Simon Carroll. Thank you for coming on the show, Simon.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, Joe. Cheers.
Yeah, we've just had a little chat about, football and Justin Herbert being an exciting new prodigy in the Chargers. But today we're going to be covering the NFC wildcard games, maybe do a little bit of prediction on the NFC Championship playoffs, and also just a quick section about the National Championship game, Alabama versus Ohio State. So let's just get straight into it. So the first game we're going to talk about today, the Seahawks and the Rams, a game I was really looking forward to because I thought it was going to be very close, and it was. So the Seahawks finished as the loser of that game, 20 points to the Rams 30. What were your opinions on that game?
Two relatively similar teams. I think the NFC West in general has been a rather unusual division this year. You consider it to be one of the stronger divisions in the recent years, and yet this year every team in there seemed to have its stumbling moments. And I'd argue that both these teams came into the playoffs maybe slightly underwhelming. Didn't really seem to have much momentum going into playoffs, particularly Seattle, who since halfway point of the season, they've really struggled on offense to get things clicking, which is interesting really, because obviously traditionally Seattle, we know that Russell Wilson, he's been cooking, hasn't he, as everyone likes to say.
Yeah.
They're exciting to watch, and they haven't been since about week 9 or 10. The defense, which has traditionally struggled during Pete Carroll's time there, well, ever since the Legion of Boom certainly disbanded, they've come good. Carlos Dunlap came over from Cincinnati in a trade, and I think they've looked better and better. So this was, I suppose, almost a contest of who had the better defense at some point. The Rams, with those two quarterbacks, Jared Goff and John Wolford, I think they were playing games a little bit before the contest, trying to hide the deck a little bit and not let the Seahawks know who started at quarterback. But there's something to be said that Sean McVay, and he's not happy with how that offense is playing as well as the Seahawks offense. So he was, I think, quite happy to go with Wolford, even if Jared Goff was healthy, which is a bit of a damning indictment of a number 2 overall pick back in the day, or number 1 overall pick, should I say, rather. It was an interesting contest. I thought it was quite cagey at the start, but obviously when you look at these 4 units, the 2 offenses and defense of the team, I think the best one was undoubtedly the Rams defense with Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, and I think that was really what shone through. 30-20 was a lot more points than I imagined it would be by the end of it, but
I mean, that Rams secondary is just unstoppable, I think, and whilst DK Metcalf did have, his stats were okay, he was not I felt like Ramsey really locked him down that game, and he did get a touchdown, that nice I think it was like a 50-yard bomb from Wilson, but Ramsey is easily one of the best corners in the game, and Rams their defense probably needs to get more appreciation, I think. And one point I did think that was quite interesting was that, so when Wolford was injured and had to come off, and Goff came back on, he was still able to play just fine. So maybe there's some kind of lack of confidence in the Rams coaching team, and maybe they're not confident enough to put Goff out straight away. Because if Brady or Rodgers was injured, they'd want to argue their place into the team, but Goff just didn't really get that chance. So maybe there's a bit of lack of confidence there. I'm not too sure what you think about that.
I completely agree. I think, like you say, any starting quarterback in that situation, and we saw when he came on that he, despite the broken thumb with 3 pins in it, he could still move the football.
Yeah.
He could still throw it. I think very much they made a decision based on who they thought would be the better quarterback on the day. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's very easy to imagine Sean McVay and Jared Goff tied to the hip, because ever since McVay's been obviously Goff has been the starter, and he's done very well with Goff, almost to the point where you could almost consider Jared Goff to be a franchise quarterback, but not quite. And is he good enough in Sean McVay's system to get to a Super Bowl? Obviously so. They've been there before. But is he really, I don't think necessarily that he is Sean McVay's guy. And I think if you look at the difference in the composure and the face of Sean McVay on the sideline his last few games compared to previous seasons, it's a world away. I honestly think that it might be a little bit souring on Jared Goff in Los Angeles a little bit. And I mean,
Yeah,
I think Goff did fine when he came on. I thought, yeah, if anything, I know Wolford only had a small body of work to compare to. I thought Goff maybe gave him a little bit of a kick and helped him through that game. But yeah,
yeah,
considering where he's come from and the big contract he's got and all the adulation in previous games and some big moments in his career too. Let's be fair to him, like when he went to the NFC Championship game against the Saints, and the comms weren't working and it was loud as hell, and he still managed to beat the Saints in their own back garden. Those moments that seem to be getting quite forgotten now. And the sheer fact that he's in a quarterback battle with a guy who was a finance guy literally 3 weeks ago and had to change his LinkedIn profile, it tells you a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think Goff's plateaued. I don't. I think there is a genuine lack of confidence in Goff. I don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be moving forward, but I think Goff really needs to start to either up his game or someone's going to come in and take it from him. I think. And one more point I wanted to make on the Rams Seahawks is the Rams defensive coordinator Brandon Staley. Do you think there could be a potential head coach position for him, or do you think maybe it's too early?
Well, he's already had interviews for starters, so that helps.
Yeah.
He's spoken to a couple of teams. I think the Jets is one of them. Obviously, it's very vogue in the NFL right now, and the Rams are a case in point of trying to find the next offensive guru. We just had one of our writers, Tayyib Babu, on the touchdown right about Joe Brady, for instance, who's very popular at the moment. Seems to be in vogue, going after the guy who can match up with the quarterback. But I think there's also still some names out there on defense that really shine. Todd Bowles will get a second chance. Wink Martindale from the Baltimore Ravens is a guy who's you'll get interviews. And yeah, Brandon Staley from the Rams has done an awesome job down there. Everybody panicked a little bit when Wade Phillips left Los Angeles, because obviously Wade Phillips is an expert and he had a stacked, shall we say, Rams defense, if not aging a little bit. They were worried when pieces were leaving, weren't they? Like, and Ndamukong Suh left, and who's the cornerback? Marcus Peters got traded away to Baltimore, and obviously the way that Les Snead runs his franchise, they're always kind of flush to the salary cap, and they're running if Staley could do a decent job on it. I think he has. I think he's proven that, there's the number one defense in the NFL this year. So that's quite phenomenal. You've got Troy Hill and you've got Keenan Williams, obviously with the pick six in the last game. The secondary is back up to the standards that it used to be, and yeah, I think. I mean, it's hard to tell. I think these interviews are quite interesting, and it's something we talked about on my podcast was trying to like pigeonhole certain people into certain rooms. The Atlanta Falcons, they've had defensive coordinators as head coach for a decade plus in Mike Smith and then obviously in Dan Quinn, and I think there's something about that the owner Arthur Blank likes, but that would make sense to me. Him going to Atlanta, but having said that, the years are dying really around Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, and maybe they're just trying to squeeze the last out of them, and they might go in opposite direction. But that would be my, I think, ideal spot for him. I honestly think that he has a very good shot of being a head coach this year.
Yeah. And you just touched on that pick six that I think a pick six like that should never happen. I mean, a safe screen pass should never be intercepted for a pick six. So there's just something not quite gelling on that Seahawks team. Like you've been saying, the past couple of weeks, they've just not been playing like the Seahawks that we know. So something's got to change in Seattle as well.
It already has, hasn't it? Today, Brian Schottenheimer was fired, and I think this is a guy getting head coaching interviews himself, and I've never understood it. I mean, the one thing we saw, there's absolutely no invention in the running game whatsoever. We know this is an offense that obviously has Russell Wilson, is a talented quarterback, but it's always been a run first offense, and they always need to lean on the run to throw the football. And if Chris Carson isn't getting, moving the chains, then they're not going to be able to do it. So what did they do? They kept trying to run it up the gut time and time again. Just needs to get the ball in the hands of the running backs in space, And the one time they try it, a screen, it was sniffed out completely by the Rams, and it was game over at that point. And I think Brian Schottenheimer, his time at the Jets as an offensive coordinator, his time at the Seahawks, for me, there's little to nothing special about the offense he brings to a team. And I don't even know how many teams would offer an offensive coordinator position at this situation.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the next game, Saints and Bears. Saints finished 21 points to the Bears 9 points. In my opinion, I don't think this is a fantastic game. It wasn't very good for the most part. I think it was like 7-3 until midway into the third quarter, with the Bears only scoring on their final play. So what were your opinions on this game?
it was a tough watch, wasn't it? Now, my colleague Sam Aykroyd on the Collapsing Pocket, he forever bemoans me for saying that defensive football's fun to watch, you know, and I'd like a defensive contest. And he was quick to call me out for whinging about this game. He's a Saints fan as well, by the way, so he had a vested interest. But when you've got one offense who, if they don't get like maybe 5 or 6 yards on first down, you know for a fact they're not moving those chains, then it's almost a pointless exercise to some extent. 1 out of 10 on third down were Chicago Bears on Sunday. It was a very tough watch, and half of it is Mitchell Trubisky. Let's not shy away from it. You know, the guy's got a limited skill set and he struggles in certain situations. For instance, on naked bootlegs, the amount of times he rolled out and then he just hit his first read without even thinking about it. And the minute the guy caught the ball, he's being caught behind the line of scrimmage. He's being brought down. So it's a negative play rather than just taking the time to either scramble for he's got legs, you know, scramble for the first down or look for your second read at the second level, you know, those little things. Having said that, the guy's got touch on outside deep passes. I mean, we saw it to Javon Wims on the sideline, and then we saw it again when Wims let it slip through his fingers on the same drive. It was crazy. You know, he does have aspects. And the minute that ball fell through that guy's hands, I just knew that was the game over there, because Chicago's defense, to the credit, kept the Saints relatively, you know, quiet for the first maybe 20, 25 minutes of the game. And then the Saints just kind of accelerated, put the foot down a little bit. Obviously, they benefited from having Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas back. And despite not having that big playability like they used to, the Saints, you know, Drew Brees obviously coming to the end of his career and maybe he doesn't quite have the hand that he used to. You know, those 6-7 yard passes, that dink and dunk offense they kind of created there. Every time a receiver caught it, it was in acres of space. They from that point onwards, from about 5 minutes left in the first half onwards, it was just over. The Saints are just far too good for the Bears. And 8-8 a season for the Bears isn't great, really, is it? Let's be honest. This is a team obviously who went to the playoffs 2 years ago, should have got back there again last year and didn't, and failed miserably. And they're forever going to be lumbered with that line of taking Trubisky ahead of Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. And there was interesting comments from the chairman today, the chairman of the Chicago Bears, saying that, you know, they need much better play from the quarterback position, which, and we know they haven't taken the contract option up on Mitchell Trubisky, so he's likely not going to be there next year. But I think it was more a word of warning, shall we say, to both Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, that if things don't change this year, you're out the door too.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I spoke on Mitchell Trubisky not last episode, the episode before, and you know, I think the Bears clutched onto him way too long. They gave him too many opportunities, and you can only make so many excuses for him. And you know, I've been seeing people talking about that his wide receiver core was kind of decimated this game. Roquan Smith wasn't playing. Waylon Johnson wasn't playing. But you know, you look at someone like Rodgers, who has, you know, if you compare Allen Robinson and Devontae Adams, you know, quite a crude comparison, but you know, one good receiver to one good receiver. Rodgers can do so much better, can do so much more, and Trubisky's just not the guy. And you know, like you also said, I think there were some definite points during that game where he had looks downfield, but he would just check it down every single time, and that's not you know, the kind of game that the Bears need to be playing. So Trubisky's not it. Another interesting, I think a lot of teams are looking for quarterbacks coming up. So and this class is very stacked with quarterbacks as well. So it's going to be a very interesting draft, I think, this year. Hopefully the Packers take not something that we actually need this year. Jordan Love is just kind of wasting away on our bench, but it is what it is anyway. But I think also another interesting fact was the Nickelodeon presentation. What did you think of that?
Well, I didn't actually see any of it. I saw, obviously, I was following social media, and there's like pictures of slime in the end zone and stuff like that. I mean, it's a fantastic tool to use. Obviously, trying to encourage children into the sport to some extent, and it's not something obviously I'd use myself. Maybe one day when I have children, I'll get them involved with it. You know, a good excuse to get the football on in some capacity instead of Peppa Pig or whatever they'll be watching. But yeah, no, I thought it was inventive from the NFL. You know, and I think obviously with Nate Burleson in the commentary box did a very good job of it. How much legs has it got? I don't know. There was obviously some problems. Like I think the Saints Bears game was the one where there was an audible F-bomb dropped on the side towards halftime by a defender who just broke up a play. Yeah. And obviously, I don't know how Nickelodeon coped with that, but I can't imagine it went down too well. But and then obviously there was a fight as well in the game, wasn't there? You know, wide receiver got ejected for swinging at Chauncey Gardner-Johnson Jr. So, I mean, yeah, there's going to be some problems with it, but I did think that it was a clever idea. Interesting that they chose the playoffs, in particular this game, to roll it out. But I don't know your thoughts, but obviously you're the journalism guy, Joe. You tell me. But yeah, I honestly thought it was worth a shot anyway, and I don't think they disgraced themselves anyway.
Yeah. I think the massive SpongeBob face in between the goalposts is a bit interesting, but I think it's fun. It's the NFL's kind of dipping its toes into other audiences, and I think that's perfectly fine. Sport is something that a lot of young kids get involved in anyway. So I think it's cool. I like you said, I don't know how much leg it's got to it, but it's a bit fun. Like you say, why it was introduced in the playoffs, I'm not 100% sure, but it is what it is anyway. Hopefully it'll stay around for a little bit. It's a nice little comic relief.
Yeah, maybe. I think literally putting on for the Saints Spurs game, which maybe was was the toughest of watches in the playoffs. It gave fuel to the fire for the keyboard warriors, didn't it? It's a little bit, or a good enough excuse to keep watching it, maybe perhaps.
Yeah. Going into that third quarter, I was like, oh my god, are the Saints going to lose? Like, what's going on here? But yeah, rough game. We'll move on now to the Washington football team and the Buccaneers. Buccaneers 31 points to the Washington 23. I think Washington are an extremely well-coached football team. They fought so hard, but the Buccaneers just have so much momentum behind them. And I mean, they've got such a high ceiling that when they're playing to a good level, I think there are very few teams that can stop them.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is as close to a win for the Washington football team as they could possibly hope for in this contest. They, to some extent, backdoored the way into the playoffs, winning the division by a team letting them win the final game of the season. It's been a tough year as well for Ron Rivera, who is definitely a coach of the year candidate. He's had to overcome cancer. He's had to overcome, I think, they played 5 different quarterbacks. Yeah. They've had a name change. They've had scandal. The Washington football, he's having to change culture as well as a roster over there. So. Very difficult job he's done, and I think he's done it admirably. Yeah. And then to find a guy called Taylor Heineke, who obviously nobody has ever heard of, and if you have, you're a liar. To pluck him out from nowhere and put him, start him in the playoffs is it's quite honestly a masterstroke when you look at how well he did. And I think obviously he played loose, he played free. He did a very good job. Also benefited from the lack of film that he had that opponents could use against him. And I think obviously Taylor Heineke going forward is no one's idea of a franchise quarterback just yet. Maybe a Gardner Minshew style career at best, but certainly inventive way to compete in this contest, and almost did a good job of it. I mean, I think Brady on the other side of the ball, the Buccaneers did a very professional job of navigating against one of the better defenses in the NFL. That was certainly that front seven who Brady dissected really. Very composed, calm game. The Buccaneers are a dangerous team, and this is possibly going to be one of the best contests in the next round, in the divisional round when they travel to New Orleans. But for the third time, they're going to be playing each other. But Brady, since I think for the first half, before the bye, Brady's touchdown to interception ratio was 50-50. I think it was even. And then the last 5 games, he's thrown 14 touchdowns to 1 interception. So it was boring at the beginning of the season when everyone was talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It got tiring, Gronk. Yeah. It's tiring, Brady, boring, let's find something else to talk about a little bit. But, and when they took a nosedive, everyone was a bit shocked, but ever so slowly pulled it back together again. And now they're a team, I think, that have to be taken seriously. I think you can take those 2 losses to the Saints early in the season and really discount them, because to me, this is a very evenly balanced game of 2 very good defenses. And if you have to look at it, I would argue potentially that the Buccaneers offense is better than the Saints right now, certainly for the big playability, the talent they've got at the disposal. So, yeah, I would say the Buccaneers comfortable winners, but the Washington Redskins put up a damn good fight, and the Washington football team, should I say? Apologies. I'll be doing that. I'll be doing that for as long as I've been calling this year 2020. So, yeah, I thought it was a great contest. And worth staying up for because it was a late game, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think for Taylor Heineke to step in to a playoff game against Tom Brady of all quarterbacks and to put up the performance that he did, with that rushing touchdown where he leapt from the 4-yard line and touched the pylon. I think he played his heart out. And there was that great clip of him with Chase Young, where Chase Young's like tapping the back of his jersey. He's like, "That's my quarterback. That's Heineke." And I love that kind of culture that they look like they're building in Washington. And Ron Rivera, like you said, is an incredible coach. He's fought so much on and off the field, um, and I mean, to go on to the Buccaneers side, um, a lot of people were saying that Tom Brady's fallen off a cliff and that he's done for. And I think now that he's been given weapons, he's just reinvigorated his game. And you're looking at Cam Newton, who's just gone into the Patriots, and he's had an absolutely awful season because he doesn't have weapons like Brady had before. So Brady was going down like this, comes to Tampa Bay, and then comes back up again. So that's another thing I was going to ask you as well. What you think about the Patriots and where they're going to go moving forward?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's the classic cliche: you don't really know what you have until it's gone. And I think everyone just assumed that when Brady left New England, that kind of it would be the Patriots that continued as nothing had changed, and it would be Brady who struggled and maybe saw a dwindling down his career. And how wrong people were. Bill Belichick rightly gets a lot of adulation for those 6 Super Bowls and 8 appearances. Basically a dynasty he's created over 20 years, but it was a big time struggle this season. And I, for one, was reticent to write them off because how many times have people tried to do that and failed? You don't want to do that with the Patriots and with Belichick. But the warning signs were there before the season, and obviously they were affected with COVID opt-outs a lot more than any other team, I suppose. And it was weird how they only went for Cam Newton right at the end of free agency just before the season started. I know they got a great deal for him, and to be fair, they were very pleased with how Cam performed this season under relatively difficult circumstances. He was a professional, and I think he'll still get a shot elsewhere, maybe even in Chicago, who knows. But Patriots are looking at a tough 2 or 3 years. For all the good that Belichick does, he can coach a team, he can run a team. He's very good with pro personnel scouting and knowing pieces that will fit in an instance. He's good at taking chances, trade chances on players with maybe check a pass and who've already been problems for other franchises, and they fall in line when they go to New England. But for all of that, his drafting's not been the best. Certainly the early rounds of his drafting, and for that reason, they're in a bit of a rebuild now. So it's not just tinkering. It's not just adding the pieces left and right. I can't remember it. There was a golden patch of first rounders with Rob Mayo and then obviously Rob Gronkowski was a second round pick in those early 2000s years. And then since then, it's been a real slog to think of, a very good player that they've managed to go out and get from the college ranks. So that's how you build a franchise. You can't afford to trade your way back into it, even though teams like the Rams and the Eagles tried to do that. If you're looking to set up another 20-year dynasty, then that's the way they're going to go. And it will be interesting. Obviously, they've lost Nick Caserio as well, who's just been appointed the general manager of the Houston Texans. So that front office is in flux. I think it's refreshing, Joel. All these New England Patriots fans over there on this side of the pond, used to, like Manchester United fans, used to winning. It's come naturally to them, and now they're going to get a nice harsh dose of reality. This is football. The whole sport is set up to make it hard to repeat success. The parity is at the heart of this game, and if they have to miss the playoffs for 2 or 3 years, so be it. This is the way football is. I don't think Belichick's going to worry about his job anytime soon. But definitely tougher times for the Patriots. Not to say that they can't do it, but I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, you look at the difference between the stark difference between the Browns last 20 years, the Patriots last 20 years. Now that's completely flipped. So, the league, I love the salary cap and I love the draft because I just think it should be implemented into all sports, in my opinion. I think it always shakes it up. You never know who's going to perform well. The Browns have so many good players, and a lot of people are saying that they're an amazing team, but we can be almost happy for all these Browns fans that are finally getting into the playoffs and they're finally performing well. Maybe they've got the quarterback that they've always wanted. The NFL is really great for that. One last thing I want to say about the Washington football team. I just want to touch on Dwayne Haskins and how Tyler Heineke, came in with what was 4 weeks, very limited notice anyway. And, Dwayne Haskins came into every game, looked completely unprepared. And then Heineke comes in and shows off. And, I think he really put Haskins to shame. And what's next for Haskins? I mean, what can he do?
Well, the simple answer is not much. I don't imagine in terms of going forward. He's certainly not got a body of work that he can be proud of. Yeah, I mean, one of the classic mantras in the NFL is work ethic. People talk about it all the time, and effort and desire. That's all part and parcel of it too. There's something sometimes first round draft picks feel like they're entitled to an NFL career, and it'll definitely land somewhere. Will Dwayne Haskins at some point, because teams are desperate for quarterbacks, and there's not enough going round for the NFL. So people take a shot on him and hope for the best. I mean, how many quarterbacks have we seen get 2 or 3 stabs elsewhere before people realise that they're not good enough? And Haskins at Ohio State was an excellent college quarterback, so he has the physical tools to do it. The question becomes whether or not he's got the desire to do it. And
Yeah,
when you get paid a big contract, and you have money, it would affect even the most modest people. How your outlook on life. Do you really do you love football? That was a big question mark for Dwayne Haskins coming into the draft, and it is. I mean, it's classic Washington football team, isn't it? Dwayne Haskins slipped, I think, the 11th pick overall in that draft. And what had happened that off season was that Dan Snyder, the owner of the Washington football team, had basically fired Scott McCloughan, who was the acting general manager, and taken over drafting role himself, like a businessman, like he knew what he was doing, and he drafted Dwayne Haskins. And Dwayne Haskins was falling down the board, and maybe this is why. When you look, and like you say, when you compare it to Taylor Heineke, who comes in on short notice, plays his heart out, diving for the pylon, just seems so clued up with the playbook. Don't get me wrong, I assume that things were pared down a little bit for him, and they put in a nice set of plays that work well to his skill set, because he was a elusive quarterback. He can move. Maybe they did a bit of that for him, but Ron Rivera isn't somebody to quickly just dismiss someone. He'll certainly given Dwayne Haskins the opportunity to impress him. And it took all of about a month or so before he decided to go and trade for Kyle Allen from the Panthers, one of his old quarterbacks, because he knew that Haskins wasn't going to cut the mustard. And I think it's a shame, really. I think is the big thing, because obviously if you've got that talent, like we say, I think there's about 20 franchise quarterbacks in a league with 32 teams. Someone could have really done with Dwayne Haskins being a star.
yeah,
If you look at it from somebody else's perspective. And how many quarterbacks have Washington been through since trying to find the next guy? It's just it's a crying shame, but ultimately work ethic tells. And I think Sunday night, or Saturday night rather, was the perfect opportunity for everyone to see just how much hard work rather than talent can win out.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a quote from Ron Rivera. I forget exactly when it was, but he was talking about that he left Dwayne Haskins in for a fourth and long or something, because he wanted to test him. And Dwayne Haskins takes the ball, throws like a 3-yard pass, and then they're out on downs. And he just knew at that moment that the awareness, and Haskins is just not really the guy. So. It is very interesting. We've been talking a lot about quarterbacks in this podcast, and I think there's going to be some serious shakeups in the NFL, and it's going to be a very exciting year next year. So we'll move on to the championship playoffs. Packers versus the Rams. What are your first thoughts of this game? Who do you think's going to win out?
This is an interesting one. Obviously, the big matchup in this one will be that Packers offense up against this Rams defense. Two, what I would call elite units either side of the football. It's going to come down to whether or not Aaron Rodgers can either manufacture touches for Davante Adams despite the presence of Jalen Ramsey, or if he can lean on his surrounding cast, who obviously, aren't quite in the same league as old Adams on the other side of football. You got your Adam Lazards and your Marquez Valdez-Scantlings of the world. If they can do a job, because Ramsey, as we've seen, like you said earlier, DK Metcalf got his, and I think he ended up with 2 touchdowns in that game. But Ramsey is very confident, very accomplished cornerback, and he seems to be happy in Los Angeles, which is obviously a big thing, because he's played tailed off when he was at Jacksonville and he wanted out. But that's the big key. I think obviously if Aaron Donald's fit and healthy after hurting those ribs on Sunday, I think that's going to be telling whether he can create any interior pressure. But Aaron Rodgers is one of the better quarterbacks out there who, against interior pressure, to be honest, they always say it's Brady's kryptonite. Rodgers never really suffers from that because he's got good pocket manipulation. So I still think the Packers are favourites, Joe. You'll be pleased to know. But I think they probably would have preferred playing the Saints
Yeah,
or the Buccaneers, the Packers, because the
yeah,
Rams, they can get on rolls, and I know he'll want to start John Wolford again. I don't know whether or not he will, but you can see Robert Woods and you can see Cooper Kupp, kind of getting, if they get in a rhythm, Los Angeles, a very difficult team to stop. But one thing I will say, and it's probably going to be the defining factor, because I think maybe, the Packers offense and the Rams defense may to some extent cancel each other out. I think if you look at the Rams offense, everything about Sean McVay, everyone also always assumes it's really dynamic aerial offense. It's not. It's based completely and solely on the run. Every play could be a run play. If you look at it, all the plays look the same from the line of scrimmage. You see it. It's always 21 personnel, one running back, two tight ends, and you don't know where the football's going. But Cam Akers absolutely bossed it in the wild card round. If they can get any kind of running game going against that Packers defense, then we could be in for a bit of a close game. I think that's the key point there.
yeah. I 100% agree. Packers defense has not been good against the run the whole season. We've got Kenny Clark, who's an incredible nose tackle, but I mean, I think we've got Jair to Jalen Ramsey. Jair's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. So it's like you said, it's going to be an incredibly important matchup. My roommate is a Rams fan, so it's going to be a very fun game for us to watch. Cam Akers has stepped up massively. I really, really liked him coming out of Florida State. I think he had the team on his back. They had like Blackman at quarterback. I'm not 100% sure. He wasn't very good, but he was incredible at Florida State. And you've got MVP favorite Rodgers, Aaron Jones leading the backfield. So if they can shut down the offense, I think the Packers are going to struggle. But I think it's going to be so close. I think it's going to be like a one touchdown game. I'm going to be on the edge of my seat for the whole thing. Who do you think, if you had to predict a score?
Oh, I think it's going to be relatively meager score. I would argue it's probably going to be something along the lines of 24-17 or 24-20 this contest. But I think the Packers edge it. I would say that Aaron Rodgers' experience is key, and I just cannot entertain the idea that Aaron Rodgers does not get back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
In his career, he's been somewhat robbed of that.
Yeah.
But this offense, everyone was worried about Jordan Love coming in and the Matt LaFleur's, designs of this offense going forward, and there's nothing to worry about really. I mean, it's a very similar story in the draft when they took Jordan Love to the Eagles taking Jalen Hurts, and the two teams couldn't be more opposite.
Mm-hmm.
One team's completely dysfunctional, and the other one seems to be in lockstep, know exactly what they want from this offense, and as long as Rodgers has the keys to that offense, I would consider them favourites for this game.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. Have you seen the video of Rodgers and Love? They're like practicing throwing the ball into the net.
No, I've not seen it. Is it good?
Oh, so Love's like, taking the ball and he's struggling to throw it in, and then Rodgers like comes up behind him and he like does like a little hand motion, and then he like nets 3 in a row, and I'm like, oh, that is what all Packers fans were hoping for, was that exact video. Of Love struggling, Rodgers comes in, tells him what to do, and then boom, boom, boom. I mean, Rodgers is just one of the most talented QBs in the league. I think the Packers have been so lucky to have the stretch of quarterbacks that we've had. We can only hope that Love's going to be the same. We'll move on now to the Saints and Buccaneers game. I personally think the Buccaneers are going to win. I think it's going to be an upset in New Orleans, but the Buccaneers coming in with momentum, and the Saints really struggled against a torn-up Bears team. What are your predictions for this game?
I would be inclined to agree, Joe. I would just offer one caveat that the Saints, for all season, everyone sees from top to toe, you consider it one of the better rosters in the NFL, stacked with talent, and they've got a head coach who is phenomenal. There's no two ways about it. Everyone, you can always look for these next great head coaches. Well, Sean Payton's been doing this for a long, long time, and his scheming is up there with Andy Reid's. Those two are the best guys at scheming plays, at creating packages for games, at knowing their offense and their weaknesses. And I'm really excited to watch this game. I think this is possibly good. There's too many good games in this divisional round. I'm really looking forward to this one, though. I would go I'm going to take the Buccaneers for a few reasons. One, it's going to annoy my friend Sam Two, there's obviously, you know, the Buccaneers are hot right now, and if you match them up unit for unit, I'd say that the Buccaneers offense is that a little bit more better than, say, the Saints defense is better than the Buccaneers defense, if you know what I mean. So if you just turn to a mathematical equation, I would say that the odds are with the Buccaneers probably cancelled out by home advantage for New Orleans. But we are yet to see the yearly dose of misfortune for the Saints in the playoffs, like we've seen the last 3 years. The twice against Minnesota with some dodgy calls, and obviously the one time against the Rams where they got away with pass interference. I'm looking forward to that. You know, it's something to look forward to every year. How are the Saints going to lose this one? What's going to happen to the Saints this year, where they're cruelly denied another spot in the NFC Championship game? So if we can have that again in this game, that'd be very pleasing. And yeah, maybe just for all those Brady haters out there too. You know, this is a guy who people will forever saying, "Oh, he's not as good as Peyton Manning," and then when everyone realized he was, he's not as good as Aaron Rodgers, and everyone realizes, you know, he's just as good as Aaron Rodgers. You know, and this guy, he's been to 8 Super Bowls and he's got 6 rings.
Yeah.
You know, he is undisputedly the GOAT. Whether or not you like the Patriots or don't, which I don't, you know, whether or not you like dominance or dynasties or not, and I don't, but this guy needs some respect. And to go from that to a new team with no off season, you know, a new playbook across what we're doing right now on Zoom. I think the job he's doing is phenomenal, and he's in red hot form. And I really think the Buccaneers can sneak this one, maybe by a field goal.
Yeah. If you had to do a way too early Super Bowl prediction, who do you think?
Oh, Packers Buccaneers, and then that's a tough one. I can tell you, I probably think it's going to be Packers Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like the Packers. I would probably be inclined to be excited about a Bills Buccaneers though. That I think any mixture of those 4 teams, I'd be quite happy.
Yeah. Not counting in the Ravens this year.
I love the Ravens actually. They're a very good football team. I love their experience in the playoffs, and you know, and they've kind of built themselves a juggernaut there that seems to be in and around the mix all the time. My wife's a Ravens fan, so I get to watch a lot of Ravens football. But to me, I like new teams coming up. You know, for Buffalo not won a playoff games in 25 years, get them in the mix. Same with Cleveland. You know, the Buccaneers. It was a long time since Gruden had they not been back to the playoffs. So let's keep it fresh. Maybe having a little caveat for Aaron Rodgers, considering he's only got 1 ring.
I think if it's not this year, I think we're going to struggle. I mean, I think we've got, you know, Robert Tonyan has come in and has been a vital part of that offense, and I'm really, really excited for this year. I think it's going to be a very, very good playoff round. I think it's going to be a great championship round, and I cannot wait for the Super Bowl. We'll finish off today with the college football championship game. Alabama versus Ohio State. Alabama scoring a incredible 52 points to Ohio State's 24. Bama winning their 18th championship and arguably having, you know, one of the most explosive offenses in college football history. What were your opinions on this game?
Well, I didn't actually watch it live, this one. Work duties, unfortunately, getting in the way, but I did manage to catch the highlights afterwards, and to be quite frank, Joe, it went exactly as you would imagine. That no team has been able to hold a candle to Alabama this season. Every year they're in the mix for college football playoffs, but this season it just seems to like they have taken a massive, almost advantage of being able to create like a winning culture where other teams have struggled in the conditions. I think they've almost used that to their advantage to some extent. They've got this winning program. They get a lot of good talent, no doubt about it, but they're also very good at turning 3-star players into great NFL draft prospects. Between them and Ohio State, in the last 5 drafts, in the last 10 drafts, I think they've had 32 first-round draft picks between the 2 teams. These are 2 of the premier college football programs out there. And there was some stick given to Ohio State about whether they should have been in that game or not. They only played 6 regular season games this year, which, you know, let's face it, it's not really their fault, is it? But I think they proved against Clemson that they were worthy of being on talent alone, of being in the playoffs. It's just whether or not, you know, they deserve to be voted that high, considering how much other teams have played and got good records, you know. But yeah, they couldn't hold a candle to Alabama in this one, and it was over by halftime. You know, they had such talent on that Alabama offense. You know, Devonta Smith just won the Heisman. Mm-hmm. He's going to be probably a top 10 draft pick, and he might not even be the best wide receiver on the board, but he showed out again. it's very, very easy him to take it easy in this game. They wouldn't need to use him. He's obviously leaving. He's won everything he could possibly win at college level.
Yeah.
Jalen Waddle came back after a crazy injury early in the season. They barely had to use him. Najee Harris, one of the most underrated pieces of that offense, the running back, he's balling. He should have had a lot more, clout in the Heisman race himself. And then obviously you've got Mac Jones, a case in point about these 3-star guys who coached up by that Alabama team. And it's a big underrated aspect of what Nick Saban's done in Tuscaloosa. He's been able to get these assistant coaches in that really elevate them above the rest. They've got like 3 or 4 head coaches on their staff, quite frankly. And obviously Steve Sarkisian, their offensive coordinator, he was coached his last game for Alabama in the national championship game. He's going to be the Texas head coach. And schemed up another great one. And they'll just replace him with someone like Adam Gase or Bill O'Brien, and it'll go on and on and on. And very difficult. It's completely opposite to NFL. It's very difficult to break into this kind of like top flight where you've got Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson, and then maybe one other team each year. It's very, very hard to break into that college football playoff semi-final. But yeah, they completely deserve to win it. Not much to be said, really. I think Saban's probably very as proud of this national championship as he ever has been of any of the ones he's won. I can't remember he's won now in Alabama. I think it's 5 or something, and he's got one in LSU as well. So yeah, the job he's done is incredible. Alabama completely an undeserved winners, and that's not saying anything bad about Ohio State, because I thought against any other opposition they'd have been more than a match. Yeah,
I mean, I think if we even just go over the stats of Alabama, Mac Jones was 36 for 45. 464 yards and 5 touchdowns. Najee Harris, 178 total yards with 3 touchdowns. Devonta Smith, only 11 catches for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns before he came off. I mean, when you come off that Joe Burrow LSU year and you come to this year, I mean, the last 2 years of college football have been so incredible. I mean, I love Joe Burrow. I think, his season was so unfortunate. I think he is an incredible player. I think Mac Jones is an incredible player. And also, the Buckeyes did have some notable absences from their team. They had, I think it was 2 D linemen were out. Their starting kicker was out. But I don't think that was the reason why they lost the game. I think, like you said, no team's been able to hold a candle to Alabama this year. Ohio State weren't going to do it. Like you said, they're coming in, definitely with a lot of doubts. And whilst they did silence some of those doubts against against Clemson, I think Alabama were just so far ahead of Ohio State, and it showed in the scoreline as well. But yeah, I think the college football playoff this year was incredible. If you haven't seen it, definitely go watch the highlights. I mean, 52 points is the most that Alabama's ever scored in a national championship game. So definitely go and watch those highlights if you haven't already. But yeah, that just about wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for coming on, Simon. We were originally supposed to have 2 other guests, my 2 co-hosts on with me today, but I think we about made up for it. If you want to plug anything that you're writing or working on.
Yeah, I'll go for it. Yeah. Well, first and foremost, Joe, thanks very, very much for having me on your show. It's been a blast. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at NFL Draft Sci. I'm obviously content provider and head of content actually for the Touchdown, UK's best, I would argue, NFL and college football website. You'll find me on the Collapsing Pocket podcast, which you can find at Pocket Crumble on Twitter as well, and obviously on all good social media platforms. I'm pretty much got my finger in every single NFL UK pie you can think of. So if it's got the vibe of a UK feel to it, I'll be somewhere in the midst. But yeah, awesome, absolutely fantastic. Thanks for letting me on, Joe. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for coming on. Next episode, in the future, we're going to start delving into the NFL draft and Super Bowl, because that's going to be very, very exciting to cover. So if you want to come on again in the future, you're more than welcome. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.